Okay, so next up we have Terryn Varney from the Kentucky Center for Ag and Rural Development. Terryn has been with KCARD since February of 2022 as a business development assistant. She has 14 years of experience in the nonprofit sector where she focused on communications, grant writing, administration, program development, and volunteer coordination. Tonight, she'll be speaking about improving communication with your partners. And Terryn, if you're ready, take it away.
Yes, ma'am. Thank you so much for that great introduction. I always like to hear about myself, so thank you for that. But thank you all for being here. I'm going to take just a second to kind of move a couple of things around so I can see everything. All right, good deal. All right, so if you all please indulge me in the chat, if you would tell me, where would I go if I wanted a Big Mac? And these are not trick questions. McDonald's, absolutely. Thank you all. All right, so finish this one. Red Robin, also in the chat, unless you're super, yeah. Good job. Yes, yum. I was wondering if anybody would be brave enough to like unmute for that one. So please don't make fun of my singing voice. All right, last one. What is for dinner? Beef. Absolutely, yes. You all are so smart. We're going to pretend that we're in person and I just gave you all candy for the right answers. So yes, absolutely. All of those were correct. And don't feel bad if you didn't know the answer. But if I were to ask you all what those were, you would say things like, it's marketing, it's branding, it's consistency, and those are all correct. You would not be wrong when you said those things. I mean, we are at the Direct Marketing Summit after all. So we are talking about marketing. But for my session, I'm going to challenge us to think about marketing in a little bit of a different way and how we get to what we know how to market. So that is kind of leading us to how we improve our communication with customers. I really like this quote from Mr. Walmart. There's only one boss, the customer, and he can fire everybody in the company from the chairman on down simply by spending his money somewhere else. I think that is pretty important. So we're going to talk a little bit more about how we, yeah, there we go. I started going a little too far in there, got a little overexcited. All right, so here we see the 6 pillars of customer service. And while we typically think of customer service as something we do face-to-face with customers, we should strive to use these to improve how we communicate with customers on any platform, just across the board. So we're going to go ahead and talk about attitude so you guys can kind of start seeing what I'm meaning about this. So our attitude is the first key to understanding customers. Let's talk about this in real life. So think about a time when you were a customer somewhere. Maybe it's a restaurant, maybe it's at the farmer's market, just you are the customer and you have asked a question about a product. How did the person that answered your questions, how did they make you feel? Were they rude to you about the questions? Were they excited to talk to you about the product? And did that have an influence on what you ultimately purchased? I'll tell you a personal story. So a little information about me. I'm allergic to aloe. I'm the only person that I know that is allergic to aloe, but aloe is in a lot of skincare products. And I went up to a booth one day at a farmer's market in a different city. I was traveling, so it was not in Kentucky. And I went up to this booth and she had a lot of aloe listed in a lot of her things. And I said, would you have anything that is aloe free? And told her that I was allergic to aloe. She got so excited. She started like telling me all about all of the different products that she had that didn't have aloe in it. And no lie, I was only going to buy like one bath bomb when I went up to her booth. But then she was so excited and she was so passionate and she cared so much about how her products could help my skin that I ended up just like scooping everything up. So it definitely, her attitude about her product and about wanting to help me definitely influenced my purchases there. So kind of with that example, you can see that she cared. She tried to solve a problem that I had. She was friendly. She definitely had a whole lot of energy. And so, and we're going to get to another kind of point in just a second. But, you know, here's a customer that has come up to her with a problem that ultimately she could post on Facebook, put in a newsletter, use for her marketing purposes. Hey, allergic to aloe, I have products for you. All right. So we love this picture of Grumpy Cat. He's listening. He just doesn't care. I think that interest in being customer focused, it should be a given. Otherwise, like, why else are we doing this? And there's so many other things we could be out there doing, but if we're not interested in what helps our customers, then, you know, what are we here for? So the interest in the customers really does personalize your relationship with them. And often so much issues come because of that perception that we just don't care. Remember, communication, it's a two-way street. So as much as you want customers to hear you, they also want to be heard. So as you're hearing from customers, you should be taking notes. You know, what questions are they asking? What new products or produce or, you know, whatever, what are they asking for? Obviously, you won't be able to grant every request. But as you are considering how you grow as a business, if you're listening to your customers and what they're wanting from you, they've already told you how they would support that growth, right? So in the chat, if you all don't mind to share, how do you keep up with the feedback that customers give to you? Is it maybe you have a notebook that you keep with you, and as people have questions, you can jot them down? Is it that you have a Word document? Do you send out surveys? So just in the chat, if you don't mind sharing, just let us know how you keep examples of that feedback. All right, so I'm going to go ahead and move on while you all are doing that. All right, so now it's time for action. This is going to look different depending on the situation. So we're going to kind of stick with, you've gotten the same question 5 times at the farmer's market. You got the same question 5 times last week at the market, and you kind of don't know what to do with that. Often what I see is that people are like, again, I got that question. Why do I keep getting that question? Why don't people know this information about my product? But what I am going to argue is that they have given you great content for marketing. And this kind of goes back to, you know, I've shown up to the bath bomb booth, and maybe I'm a customer that she never thought of before, a person who may have some allergies to certain products. So maybe a person has shown up to the booth that has a certain question, and that question might be the title of your next newsletter. You know, if you were here at the training last year, that was one of the greatest things that I picked up from the digital farmer, because she has some great newsletter content, and that's some of the things that she does. She will pose a question in the newsletter, and it's very, very engaging. But so we can use these types of things to direct our marketing path. Otherwise, as far as action, if you have made a promise to a specific customer, or if there is a follow-up that needs to be made to a specific person, you always want to do that as well. Like, action doesn't just mean a large group, it can be that individual person as well. All right, we're not going to linger here. Hopefully it goes without saying that, our how we talk to people is also very important. We always want to be positive. I think that sometimes when we talk about this and we say, be positive, people think that I'm telling them to be very chipper, very smiling. And if that's not your personality, that's going to look weird on you, right? So you want to be you, just a positive, appropriate person. We want to make sure that we have appropriate language when we're talking to customers. All right, so this is the part that I really kind of hate doing virtually, because if we were in person, imagine that as soon as this slide comes up, I'm going to cross my arms, I'm going to start like looking out the window, and I'm going to start like kind of being bored looking. I might sigh a few times, I might lean back in my chair, and all of you are going to zone out at a certain point, because I am putting forth body language that shows that I clearly don't want to be there, right? And again, if you are not the cheerleader type person, you don't have to be something that you're not, but we do want to be mindful of how our body language can be perceived. There are reasons why religious statues are arms open and palms up, because that's a very welcoming posture. I'm not suggesting that you hug all of your customers and like offer that up as they're walking into your booth at the farmer's market. But we do want our posture to be open, pleasant looks on our faces, and very engaging kind of posture. Okay, now this is kind of interesting, because how we dress when we interact with customers, obviously, I'm never going to tell you that you need to wear your Sunday best when you're at the market, or when you're delivering produce, when you're dropping off CSAs, or doing beef shares. You don't have to wear your Sunday best. But we always have to be mindful of how we are perceived. So we want to be clean, we want to be appropriately dressed. But one thing that I'm going to argue here is that this is also an opportunity for marketing. We have quite a few vendors that we work with that will purchase t-shirts at the beginning of the market season, and they're branded, they have their logo, they may have a fun saying on the back, and that's what they wear throughout the summer. And there's a lot of times where like customers will say, can I buy one of those? And it started out being what they were going to wear to look nice and be appropriate for the market, but now they've got people wanting to purchase them. All right. Okay, so tone of voice, I think, can sometimes be very tricky. It's not what you say, it's how you say it. So I can say, oh, I love your tomatoes. Or I can say, I love your tomatoes. which one did you believe? The first one hopefully sounded sincere, that I do love your tomatoes, but the second one sounded sarcastic, and you probably left that interaction going, I'm not really sure that she liked my tomatoes. So I love and I should have looked up to see who actually said this, but there's that quote that says, people don't remember all the things you say, but they remember how you made them feel. And I feel like tone of voice is why that happens. Now, I will also say that often we match energies. So if a customer or a potential customer comes up to you and maybe they're frustrated, and you can tell that from the moment they say hello, you can tell that this is not going to be a happy interaction. I think we all immediately want to match that. We want to be defensive. We want to defend our product. But so our voice tends to speed up. The pitch tends to go up. We tend to get louder. I know me, my voice can be a little country sometimes, but if I am in a situation where I feel like I'm, needing to be defensive, I get real proper real quick. And I guess sometimes it depends on where I'm at, because I can also get real country real quick. So just kind of depends on what I'm feeling defensive about, I guess. So my suggestion here is, when people come up to you, and let's say it's at the farmer's market, it's okay to take a breath before you respond. I think often we don't like silence, and silence makes us uncomfortable. But if we're going to react with that same energy, it's best to take a second, take a deep breath, and be the person that maintains the calm in the conversation. And I do love this little cartoon. The tone of the letter is stern, almost threatening. But see here, he signs with a smiley face. So I think we may be all right, because we all know what capital letters in an email stand for, right? If someone's using capital letters, they're yelling at us, right? So nobody likes to be yelled at, but the smiley face, that makes it all okay. All right, so I kind of went through those pretty quickly, but I do feel very heavily that those pillars of customer service really do set the stage for how you communicate with customers. If our attitude is good, if we are being appropriate, if we care about them, if we're showing interest, that communication is going to go so much better. People just want to be heard. They want to be seen. They want to be cared about. And that's going to definitely promote that brand loyalty. And then again, some of those things that happen when they're asking questions, that can definitely inform future marketing campaigns. One story from a coworker of mine, she sells beef at her local farmer's market. And one day a person came up to her, and she's told us about two questions. One question was, is your beef gluten-free? That was the first question. The second question was, can I get the whole cow? If I buy the whole cow, can I get all cuts as a fillet? So we people here in the industry know the answers to those questions. So she answered the questions as they were coming in, but definitely the fillet question, she could do a social media post. She could do put something in the newsletter that shows the different cuts that she offers. You put out her price sheet, explain what different cuts are, where they come from on the cow, what maybe her favorite cut is. She can use that, even if we may kind of chuckle and say, the whole cow is a fillet, if only. We may kind of chuckle at that, but she could use that to inform how she interacts in the future with marketing for her customers. All right, so let's talk about a couple other ways that we can kind of communicate with our customers. So let's say that you set up a booth, or maybe this is your store. Whenever you walk in, if you've never walked in the front of your store or your booth, you should. You should kind of walk around and then come to your booth from the front side to see what customers are seeing when they first come to your booth or your store. Because in all areas, there's going to be a natural flow. So in my undergrad degree is in sociology, and sociology is all about the study of humans in groups for the most part. We're keeping it simple. And one of the most eye-opening questions that I was ever asked was, what side of the steps do you walk up? And it surprised me for some reason when everybody in the classroom said, well, you walk up the right side of the step. Because it was like this rule that was a rule, but it's not an actual rule. And so our teacher questioned us on how do we know that? And the long story short is that we're socialized every day to follow patterns. So when you look at that as far as how your selling is set up, first thing that you need to know is 90% of people turn right when they walk into a store. So when the first thing that you come into your store or your booth, what is to the right? Now, if you are at a farmer's market and there's like a whole bunch of booths set up in a line, the turning to the right thing may not apply, because it's really going to depend on how the natural flow of everything is going. But so either to the left or to the right when you immediately come in, what is there? Doesn't always have to be product, but it can be, the follow us on social media. It can be the signups for the newsletter. It can definitely be product. It can be free samples. We'll talk about that in the next slide. It's going to be something that draws them in. So kind of be mindful of how you are leading customers into your setup. Also, don't forget about curb appeal. If I have any gripes about farmers markets, this is my gripe. I'm on the board for my local farmers market, and I love my local farmers market, and I love farmers market, period. But I do get frustrated at folks who say, well, nobody comes to my booth. Well, what are you doing to bring them in? Because cute sells. If anybody knows those little bitty things of Vaseline that are for like lip gloss or chapstick, I will buy every single one because it's tiny and it's cute. Now, I'm not suggesting you all do that, but keep those types of things in mind when you're setting up your booth or your store. Try to make it cute, or pretty. A nice tablecloth goes a long way. Some like wooden containers to hold product in goes a long way. And there's a lot of great examples out there of people doing these things. So just kind of think about those things. What are you doing to make your booth bring people in? All right, so samples. I think I saw Amy from Roaring Shoals on here. they do a great job because even on Facebook, I want to taste test what they have. Sampling, obviously you have to, and I'm not going to go through what all you need to do to be able to sample, KDA sampling certificate and whatnot, you will need those things, but sampling sells. I kind of relate it to, so cooking or cutting onions makes me cry, but cooking onions makes me hungry because there's just something about that smell. So when you are at the market, people sampling your product, and as you can see here in this information, a good portion of people had not planned on buying the product and they bought it because they sampled it. So I think that sampling is a very big key seller to communicate with your customers, because what's the best way to communicate but by feeding people? I think feeding people is a great way to communicate. And you can also take a play from others' playbooks and post those things on your Facebook pages, social media, put recipes in your newsletters. One thing that, one cautionary tale is, I talked to some vendors last year and they were very surprised that some of the things that they grew didn't sell. And I said, well, what kind of things are we talking about? And I'm just going to use okra for an example. Okra was one of the things that they mentioned. And I said, well, do people know how to make okra? Do they know how to work with it? And they were like, we don't know. And so when you sample, like if you were to prepare some okra for people to sample, they're going to be more likely to buy it because then they know what it tastes like. So when people have a certain amount of money, even people with money to spare, if they don't know how to use it, if they don't know what it tastes like, why would they buy it? The CSA that I used to purchase, at a certain point in the year, everyone is overrun with zucchini, squash, whatnot. So every year she would give us recipes for those items because she knew we were getting a lot of things with it. So she taught us in the CSA, she would put like little recipe cards or little instruction sheets on how to freeze the zucchini, a recipe for maybe zucchini bread. So that way we could diversify what we were doing. And she would have zucchini bread at the market for us to taste. And so don't factor out what the senses can do in communication. All right, so I'm kind of ending with this. I think I flew through these things a little quickly, so I apologize if I am ending early. But this is the guidelines of the 7 dwarfs. So be happy, make eye contact and smile. Be like Sneezy, greet and welcome each and every guest. Spread the spirit of hospitality. It's contagious. Please don't sneeze on people, by the way. Don't be bashful. Seek out guest contact. And you can be bashful. It's okay to be bashful. I'm an introvert, but as we're communicating with our customers, it's okay to kind of step out of your comfort zone a little bit. Be like Doc. Provide immediate service and recovery. Don't be like Grumpy. Always display appropriate body language at all times. Grumpy, he kind of always just had his arms crossed. Be like Sleepy. Create dreams and preserve the magical guest experience. Don't be dopey. Thank each and every guest. Again, customers want to be heard and they want to be thanked. All right, so that is me. That is my email address. That's my telephone number. I would be happy to answer any questions. You can email me, call me, or we can chat now.
Yeah, so we do have a few questions. Let me pull those up. Just a few quick comments that were made. Brett said good signage is a nice supplemental form of nonverbal communication, which I second that wholeheartedly. And then Sharon said first impressions are very important. You may not get a second chance. Also second that. So first question for you, Terryn. So do you have any tips for people that might be a little bit more shy or introverted? You're going to a farmer's market and you best be prepared to talk about 90% of the time, which can be, very draining. But just for people who are maybe a little bit more uncomfortable putting themselves out there, they can have a biggest smile on their face. But just if you have any tips or tricks for that.
Yeah, absolutely. So I consider myself an introvert. Being in big groups of people is pretty exhausting for me. So I completely understand where that question is coming from. What I have found is that it's easier to talk to someone if you kind of have an idea of what you want to ask. So like if they're coming up to like your booth and you can see if they've got any other items in their arms, let's say they just went and purchased some cut flowers. You can comment on the beautiful flowers, and that just sort of like, when you compliment someone, oh, those flowers are really beautiful. Did you get those here? Obviously they did, but it just kind of sparks that, like, you've given them a compliment that makes them feel good. And so when people feel good, they respond better. Also, kind of going back to the flow of like when they're coming into your area, take in consideration that when people feel stupid, they don't react well. So if we can remove awkwardness, if we can remove like people don't know what to do, that's going to make things easier on you. So kind of that positivity extends to those things as well.
Kind of related to that, do you think, like if you've personally seen this, there's been a decrease in communication and communication skills due to COVID over the past 3 years? Because I know I have gotten, if possible, significantly more awkward over the past 3 years. Something about those being inside for those 2 weeks that turned into a couple months really turned me into a bit of a hermit. So I didn't know if you've seen that as well.
Honestly, maybe. I do think we might be coming out of that a little bit. I think that COVID did make us leery to be around people and to communicate. And for so many reasons, like we didn't want to be close to other people, but we also we didn't want to be close to them. They didn't want to be close to us. And so then I think that kind of mentality is kind of stuck with us for a little bit. I have no research to back that up, just anecdotally. But I do think that we are coming out of that a little bit, or at least I hope we are. But I do think we will still struggle with that for a little bit.
Yes, yeah, I agree. And yeah, mine's all anecdotal and personal experience as well. So I don't have research for that. Do you have any recommendations for communicating tone online? Because that is the hardest place, that and text messages. I use as many exclamation points as possible to really try and hit home certain things, but sometimes it's not the most professional.
I think that communicating through any type of written, whether it's email, text messaging, like you said, like in that little cartoon, the little smiley face, let them know that it was okay. But I think that that in that little cartoon, the email was probably not okay. That person was probably just fearful of how it was going to be perceived. So I think that if we are open and honest and kind of straight to the point without, forgetting our cordial things, hi, how are you? I hope you're doing well. Those types of things. I think that they go over a lot better.
A question that came from the chat. So do you have, this is kind of similar to the first question I had, but do you have communication tips for people that might be, you know, neurodivergent? So inside they're really expressing a lot, or on their face they're expressing a lot, but just maybe struggle a little bit with that verbiage, word to word, talking to people face to face kind of thing.
Yeah, so I love this question, and I'm grateful for it, because I think that I'm ADHD as well, so sometimes communication is difficult for me because my brain is not where your brain is. And I may still be having a conversation with you that you ended 10 minutes ago. And so I think that as cliche as this is getting ready to sound, and I'm so sorry, I think sometimes just understanding and educating yourself on those types of things, on how how you communicate and how you need people to communicate to you, because everyone is different. I love Brett's suggestion. I think that you said it was Brett's suggestion about the signage, because sometimes I just cannot approach you, but I'm going to read everything that you have that I can see, and gauge if I want to put forth that energy before I go in. So I think that that was a great suggestion. But I think also, you know, keeping in mind what we want to portray. You know, we always want to portray kindness. We always want to be excited about our product. So I think just kind of focusing on those things.
Well, and I think as a customer, or, you know, even vendor to vendor, just kind of understanding that sometimes someone's tone is really not how they're feeling, or maybe you catch someone on a bad day, or I know there are just many times where someone really felt like they're probably exhausted and felt like they were giving it their all, and it does not necessarily show. So just having a little bit of empathy and grace with just everyone can be just beautiful.
Yes, we could always more of that, for sure.
Yes, yes. There was another question in the chat. For products like meat that might be hiding at the market or might be perceived as less attractive than colorful veggies, do you have any suggestions for drawing customers in? Obviously, you're talking about the farm example of, you know, cooking meat, and everyone was talking about something about cooking beef on the grill really just brings all the customers in. But maybe if you don't want to do samples, or you're wary to start doing that, if there's anything else that, because you know your meat has to stay in a cooler, if there's any tips you have for that.
Sure. So I think that there are any number of things that could be possibilities. I think that anything that makes you stand out is very key. There was a vendor that was at our market once that got a little frustrated because no one ever came to their booth, but literally it was just a table. There was nothing showing what their product was, like no one knew even what they were selling. But you know, compared to other tables, you know, it's very obvious. We have one flower vendor that has flowers just all around her booth, so it's very obvious what that is. So I think making sure that you have the ability to stand out a little bit on how you present your product. You're making signs that tell what your product is, and kind of boosting that audience a little bit on social media marketing, newsletters, things like that, so that way people know who you are and where you're going to be. I think those would be helpful.
Well, and there were a number of comments about it would be helpful to include pricing on signs, which I agree with, because you know, just sometimes you're not wanting to just chat with everyone. It would be great to know how much a certain cut is or something like that. But Sharon said photos of your products, photos of your farm operation, or even a chalkboard out front with items and prices. And Emily said signage about how your animals are raised could be really great. So things like that, like communicating without having to do the actual communication
Yeah.
would be a good way. So
Yeah, absolutely.
um,
Absolutely.
if anyone has any final questions, wants to put that through, or comments, a lot coming in. So if anyone wants to send any more of those through, just let us know. And then Terryn, if you want to hop on the chat and maybe just comment on a few things. But thank you so much. That was very informative. Taking notes personally for myself, but also to share to farmers. But I really appreciate it.